This video is for the ladies. It's to help them come to term with their true blue natures. This is what you are, ladies. This is a mirror being held up to you. Now, this young lady, a Collier also, talks about two Greek fables, right? Why be Lysistrata when you could be Medea? Now, this is the mirror I'm going to hold up to you, a Collier. Which fable, which Greek myth is more popular amongst women? Arachne or Medusa? Medusa, of course. I bet you could find women who could tell you the story of Medusa. I bet it'd be almost impossible to find a woman who even has heard of Arachne. Why is that? Now, Arachne here is real victory. She challenged a goddess and defeats her, and then she gets punished for it. She gets turned into a spider, hence the name Arachne. By rights, if feminism is what you, this woman is feminist, if feminism is what you claim it is, feminist would be 100% pushing the story of Arachne. Because this is a young lady claiming her sovereignty, her personal sovereignty from the gods themselves, right? But no, this is what they talk about. What's Medusa, right? She's a virgin. She despises male sexuality. She gets well, we'll get into it. We'll play a bit of it, right? First, we'll go into Arachne here.
Accept my challenge.
Oh, she challenged the gods here, right? Let's get over here.
Way as well. I owe Athena nothing. I'm almost sure that my works are more beautiful than hers. If she were that good, she would have the courage to accept my challenge.
Wow, now those are fighting words, right? If you ask any of us guys, Arachne is miles ahead of Medusa as a story and a character. This is a young girl challenging the gods, standing up to the gods.
You senseless girl! How dare you challenge the gods?
Athena revealed her identity, and the nymphs bowed to the goddess. But the daring weaver faced her standing with an inflexible stare.
Do you really think you can compare yourself to Zeus's daughter and the patroness of weavers?
Athena and Arachne began an unlikely clash, where
By the way, she comes out and says in the short that I wasn't gifted from the gods. I worked hard to gain my skills since I was very young. That's important.
a youngster who was little more than a little girl challenged one of the most renowned deities. The girl and the goddess spared no efforts to do the best they could. Athena wove a scene depicting her glorious victory over Poseidon in the race for Athens. Indeed, it was truly an impressive piece. When Athena saw
So she's bragging herself up.
Arachne's work, she was amazed. It was magnificent.
While you gods promote yourselves by showing off your achievements, I prefer to show off the other side of the great deities.
Arachne produced a work in which Zeus disguised himself as a bull to deceive the poor Princess Europa.
So she's not only fantastic what she does, she's calling the gods out.
Athena was enraged and tore Arachne's work. But the biggest reason for her anger was not because of the offense against the gods, but because Arachne's work was just perfect.
There you go. She outdid because what usually happens in these stories? Someone brags up they're better than the gods. The gods show up and put them in their place before they punish them. They show you how they're superior in every way. And then they punish you. But this one, This girl deserves the victory. She has no reason to be turned into a spider. It's exactly what happened. Again, feminists don't give a shit about the story. Now we'll get into Medusa, right? And you'll see why the feminists love Medusa.
When she reached the appropriate age, the young woman started her preparation to become an Athena priestess. The temple's apprentices needed to have pristine conduct and discipline. All their acts could be reflected in the goddess's reputation. One of the major requirements for becoming a priestess of Athena was absolute purity. They were to mirror themselves in Athena. Therefore, the young women should remain virgins, just like...
You see, purity means you aren't ruined by a man. Man's sperm is dirty. This is why feminists love this, right? It's the rejection that most women aren't really turned on by male sexuality. They find it gross. So this speaks for women, by the way. Not just feminists. Feminists speak for women, right? So it's all like, no, we're if women valued sex from men like men value it from women, they would never have a story like this. This would not be seen as positive.
Like their goddess, who never surrendered to the influence of Eros and Aphrodite. Medusa.
That's what it is. It's like, by the way, feminist, where are you, Collier? Feminists are not anti-family and they're not anti-marriage. What they are is pro-denial of male pleasure. The family is there to control. The family is owned by the woman. So feminists are 100% pro-family in that regard and pro-marriage, right? But they like the idea of denying men sex because it's pleasure, right? So here's the other thing. Poseidon decides he wants to ruin her by having sex with her, right? So it's a fantasy of a high status man coming onto you and you rejecting them.
Follower. In the meantime, Medusa kept carrying her normal life, unaware that she was being watched by the Olympic gods. Medusa walked by the sea, and lurking, concealed among the waves, the god of the seas followed her. She heard someone say her name.
She's got a stalker, man. She's stalked by the prince or the king, or in this case, it's the god. The highest status man in the land. He's going to throw at all other women for this one, right? Female fantasy on steroids.
Call came from the ocean. Poseidon emerged from the sea in all his paramount glory. The god used his charm to seduce Athena's priestess, but Medusa, albeit stunned by all his splendor, did not forget her vows and rejected Poseidon's advance.
See, that's it. It's a fantasy of the highest status man zeroing you and you reject him. Sorry, not even the best is good enough for me.
He did not accept the rejection and grabbed Medusa's arm.
Great fantasy.
She reacted unexpectedly and, violently hitting him in the face, managed to get rid of the god. Medusa ran to Athena's temple, the only place where she felt safe. But Poseidon, consumed by lust, went after the young woman.
There you go. That's all you need to know about this, right? Victimhood culture, but this victimhood is great. Why? Because it involves a female fantasy collier. Well, this victimhood narrative doesn't work because she's defeating another woman. That's what's going on here. This is the mirror to your face, collier. So, before we get into what even the discussion here, I want to correct you on this. Oops, misandry. Oh, right. She talks about misandry. Let's hear this, where she's admitting misandry.
Oops, a misandry. So here's the thing. I was convinced by Rachel Cuss' Medea. I fell for her. Why is Jason allowed to leave? Why does he get to make the decision to blow up everyone's life?
Okay, this is far too ahead. You guys don't have any context. So we'll start at the beginning.
Lysistrata. Hi, book people. I want to start and I want to say that I have never studied the classics like officially in like some sort of course. I just kind of read them for fun. And I don't think that means I don't have anything interesting to say about the classics, but I just wanted to let you know that in case like there is an undergrad watching this video at like 11:05 p.m. and they have an essay due at 11:55 and they have to get that on.
You don't have to put all that extra stuff in, Collier. You're basically saying this is a person who should touch grass if they come around and complain to you. Right. No, just stick with undergrad. If there's someone who knows more than you who comes up and talks to you, that's all you need to say.
WebAssign or whatever. Girly, just read the book. Just read the book. Just form your own opinion. Get out of here. People
Oh, by the way, she's got this nerd girl thing going on. I think it's put on. I think it's put on Collier, right? This woman is beautiful. She could really present if she wanted to, but she, she doesn't want to turn the guys on, right?
on the internet, at least where I hang out on the internet, have been talking a lot about the 4B movement in Korea, which I do not feel qualified to talk about, but it's very interesting. Link me the interesting videos below. But when people talk about the 4B movement, they also
It's interesting. How is it interesting? It's women bashing men. It's a feminist movement. It's a hate movement. What can I say?
bring up Lysistrata, a play where women use a sex strike to solve a societal ill. And I saw this very
And you realize this is where I'm calling you out, Collier. Uh, the 4B movement is sex strike, but it's not trying to stop war. It's just bashing men. And this is the mirror I got to hold up to you girls, right?
very interesting comment that kind of just stuck in my head. And I have no idea where this was. It's one of those things that I read maybe on like a YouTube comment or a Reddit comment or on Blue Sky. And
Right.
someone said, it's really interesting that people always bring up Lysistrata and call it a feminist play when it was performed at a time where the joke was that, haha, imagine women being able to do anything. And I didn't really remember the play that well, but I thought, well, that sounds interesting. That's not how I read it at all. And that just kind of stuck in my head. And it made me want to reread Lysistrata. So I found this book on my Northern Kentucky book trip, which is kind of interesting because it's
So this is a great big long-winded video, whether Lysistrata is a proper hate movement. Right. Okay, let's see.
written by a professor at Boston University, here in Boston. It's called Three Plays by
Proper hate movement play. Sorry.
Aristophanes. By the way, I am sure I'm pronouncing all of these Greek words wrong, and I'm so sorry. Staging Women, translated and edited by Jeffrey Henderson. And this, I think I've mentioned before, is how I prefer to read these types of books. Like, I want essays explaining to me the context. I want, like, a bunch of notes explaining the jokes and what kind of famous people they're referencing because I don't know a lot of history. This is how I like to read all of it. And this was a fantastic book. What I learned from this book is that right away, Henderson, the author, completely disagrees with that comment that stuck in my head and made me want to reread the book. Let me give you an example. That all female characters, even the naked women of comedy, were played by men does not mean that Athenian drama was a drag show or a tell against the possibility that these portrayals of women were intended to be believable. Even now,
See, it's nothing is good enough. Even if it's something that where women supposedly take over and show their strength. If it's played by men, it's bad. I mean, there's no end to this.
now, as a modern viewer of drama, we understand inherently the kind of suspension of disbelief that comes with watching a stage show. I can sit and I can watch
We don't need the apologetics. Let's get beyond that.
huge boners. But what actually happens in the play is that while Lysistrata is talking to the young women and saying, here's the deal, we're not going to have sex with our husbands, she has already, not in front of the audience, convinced the older women to go to the Acropolis and take control of the treasury. This play is about
Hey, that makes sense though, right? Well, it doesn't make sense in that women do not earn anti-war because they don't suffer from it. Know what I see on Twitter, Collier? I see people showing that, women partying while their men are being conscripted. No, women are not anti-war. So this play, if it was anti-war, was written by a man.
a sex strike, but what actually ends the war is that the women have taken control of the purse. The war is no longer being funded because the women physically have taken control of the government's money. And
Wow. Okay. But that actually makes sense in itself, right? So they stopped the war by stopping funding. Isn't that still good though? Why isn't this feminist? Right? Supposedly feminist. Oh, I know, because I know what feminism actually is. But you should be seeing this as positive feminism, right? Because these women took action and defunded the war and stopped war, right?
they also physically fight men who try to show up and get the money to fight the war. Like this play is remembered as a sex strike, but what actually happens is women gain control of the government and they put a stop to the war by saying we're done now. In the middle of a war, the people are so upset with this war that someone writes a play about women taking over the government and ending the war.
There you go. People were upset about the war, so a man wrote this. He wrote this fictional play, right? Which shows depicts women acting in a way they never would. Women, in the end, they don't want to suffer from war, but they rarely suffer personally from war. It's the men who get the brunt of it. So they're not anti-war. That's why they never take any action.
That's that's really way more interesting than a simple sex strike. But on reflection, as an adult woman rereading this play, the fact that that's what happens just kind of removes all of the feminist feelings I had towards this play.
There you go. Thank you for admitting this. So you have an understanding that feminism is about dominance of the male population through the sex of females. It's not about doing the right thing. It's not about taking action and stopping war. Thank you for admitting this, Collier. Thank you.
Honestly, can we think of anything from this period as feminist? I'm also not a feminist scholar. I'm not a historian, but like
It doesn't matter. You are a feminist. You don't need to be a scholar. You've got all the proper attitudes.
can a male author write a feminist piece of work in a culture where women are not allowed to speak? Are we allowed to do that? Are we allowed to call something feminist?
What are you talking about? Women aren't allowed to speak. They were nagging their husbands just like every other part of the world. Sorry, lady. Collier. When men went to war, were women forced to go there? Were they conscripted? No. During that time, it was the Bronze Age. How do you make bronze? By mining copper and tin. Were there any women forced down into the mines to work there? No. The galley ships where men were forced to row and they were ankle chained there to die, to either have victory or die. Were there any women there? No. Women of that time had more rights than the men. The rights of life and over death.
Don't get all cultural relativism on me. I hate that. Women have brains and should be allowed to speak. It doesn't matter what the culture is. Let me read from Henderson here. Men took elaborate measures to avoid any public exposure of their private worlds, principally by discouraging public exposure of the women of their households. A woman seen too often away from her house might be considered neglectful of her duties, and one conversing at any time with strange males would open herself to suspicion of infidelity. And so
Well, tradcons are anti-male, right? That's the big worry that women will spread their legs for other guys. And it's deserved because you know how many times I see someone post, again on Twitter, some woman being caught by her husband with another man. So these guys' fears, it was true, right?
Though the private sphere was considered officially separate, hidden by protocols of public invisibility and silence. Ideally, the woman of a man's household would, as the orator Lysias somewhat defensively put it, live so respectfully that they are shamed at being seen even by members of the family, and in the words of Pericles, would be least talked about by men either for praise or for blame. Yikes. I wouldn't call Lysistrata feminist. And also, honestly,
I disagree. Tradcons are feminist, right? They're feminist by nature. They hate their fellow man as much as you do.
reading Lysistrata and the way women talk about themselves, here's one. Here's a line from Koloniki. But what can mere women do that's intelligent or noble? We sit around the house looking pretty, wearing saffron dresses and makeup and cambric gowns and canoe-sized slippers.
That is a good point, though, because that's what any upper class woman would be doing that, right? So they're just saying a fact about what women were like back then.
Yeah, that's how the women in this play talk. It's actually really interesting. Lysistrata in this play seems to be the only woman who has a plan, and she's just kind of bullying all the other women into following her orders. And Lysistrata doesn't talk about a husband. Lysistrata doesn't talk about wanting to have sex. It's like she is not a woman in this play. And all
What are you talking about? So you're saying that to be a woman, you have to have a husband and enjoy sex with men? Is that what you're trying to say, Collier?
all the other women are just like, oh my goodness, a sex strike, oh my god. Oh, just for another example, here the older women, the chorus, are talking to the older men, and the women's leader says, thus I owe it to the polis to offer some good advice, and even if I was born a woman, don't hold it against me if I manage to suggest something better than what we've got now.
So do you consider that feminist? A woman standing up for herself as a woman to men. But you don't consider that feminist because a man wrote it.
I have a stake in our community. My contribution is men. You miserable geezers have no stake since you've squandered your paternal inheritance, won in the Persian Wars, and now pay no taxes in return. On the contrary, we're all headed for bankruptcy on account of you. Have you anything to grunt in rebuttal, any more trouble from you, and I'll clobber you with this rawhide boot right in the jaw. She kicks him. Nice. Okay, so the old
You understand, this is a man who wrote this. So this is a man talking to other men who've squandered and caused harm. This isn't written by a woman, not because women weren't allowed to write, because they just wouldn't have written this.
older women are like,
You know why they've never written it, Collier? Because the women there, they don't have to suffer the brunt of anything. Trouble comes up, the men have to deal with it and suffer from it.
guys, like we just have an idea, like we think there might be a problem, like perhaps we stop having a war, isn't that crazy? But they win. The women literally get control of the Athenian government, and they're like, all right boys, just stop. And then they cede all the power they have.
No, they don't. They remain powerful. Women had power. They didn't need official power. They dominated the family unit and they'd tell men what to do. That's a falsehood. Sparta was controlled by wealthy women. Do you know that, Collier? They would marry a guy, the man would pass on, she'd gain all his money, she would remarry. The next guy would die from war, something that she never had to suffer from. He would pass away in the war, she would gain his wealth. The, the wars, the purse strings for the wars were controlled by the women of Sparta. And the wars went on because the women of Sparta loved their slaves. They loved to have slaves. And the real life history shows you that women are not anti-war.
No one in the play thinks for a second, like, maybe the government would work better if we had some sort of equal partnership of men and women.
No, no, no. It would work better, but women don't want equality. They love, they don't want the work that comes with managing the country. And they don't have to. They just tell the men what they want and the men serve. So it's not an equal partnership, but not in the way that you're painting it.
Men, they just don't. The other two are also about women taking some sort of power and then kind of immediately just ceding that power back to the men. So the second play in this book
Again, that's a lie. They're not ceding any power. They're just not bothering with the labor that's involved with running the country.
is called Women at the Thesmophoria. And it's about this group of women who are very mad at the playwright Euripides. And they're gonna have him put on trial and murdered for his portrayal of women in his plays. And I learned from this book that Euripides is considered a misogynist, which is quite interesting because I just read Aristophanes' play about Lysistrata and I felt
Misogynist just means a man who doesn't know his place. It's the N word for men. That's all it is. So he can be a misogynist even if he writes something that you like.
that it was pretty misogynistic. Apparently, Euripides wrote about women as realistic characters in his plays where they were like stealing from their husbands or going around and like taking food or wine out of storage or stealing the babies of their slaves and passing them off as their own so that their husband would have heirs. And
So he was depicting women as they actually are, and that's why he's misogynist, exactly.
what's weird is that the women are mad at Euripides for this portrayal of them, not because that's not what they're like, but because they don't want the husbands, the men of their society, to know that that's what they're like.
Thank you for admitting this, Collier. So it's not that it's an insult to them of what they're like. It's the fact that men will see them as they are. You do realize that is quite a damning, blow to what women are, right?
Which also seems kind of misogynistic on Aristophanes' part. But in that play,
Yeah, he doesn't know his place. He told the truth, and the truth isn't flattering to you. So he's a misogynist, right?
there's a lot of hijinks. It's funnier than Lysistrata, I think. And Euripides' friend dresses up as a woman and goes and tries to be like, "Oh, I'm a lady. I think Euripides is great," and it's kind of funny. And it just ends with Euripides escaping, and the women be like, "Just write us better, please." And that's the end. The final play called Assembly Women, and it was written a couple years after the previous two, and it deals directly with women getting control of the government. It's like a satire. The women take control of the government. They put huge taxes on wealth and they demand sexual equity for the older women. And The men take
Sexual equity for the older women? What does that mean? You're saying that they wanted to, they want guys to say, sorry, we're going to find older women as sexy as younger women. Is that it? Is that the demand?
this as an opportunity to be like, cool, so we don't have to do anything because you're going to run the household, you're going to rear the children, and you're going to do the government. And they just kind of loaf about, and this government fails. And
Hey, notice what she just said. Collier, so he wrote that the men were fine with women taking the reins. Why? Because it was work and it was stress, and they didn't have to deal with it. That's right. See, men are the ones who really desire equality, not women. Women are anti-equality.
and the joke is like, see, women trying to do stuff, dumb women. In this book,
But at the same time, if you looked at so many of the real life today politicians, how many female politicians end up attacking the men of their own country with hateful policy, right? The Britain, they had one of the women in parliament trying to make a 6 p.m. curfew for all men. See, so him saying that was actually true. It maps on to what's actually happening in real life, Collier. When men are in charge, they look after women. When women are in charge, they attack the men. So, of course, men are better at looking after the country.
Henderson suggests that Aristophanes was never seriously suggesting that women should be able to make those decisions, that women should hold any form of government power. He was more pointing out like what would happen if men neglected their responsibilities toward the government.
See what I mean? Trad cons are feminist, right? He's still bashing men at the end, right?
So while I really enjoyed rereading this plays, I don't agree with the comment that I saw that convinced me to reread them, that these are somehow misogynist because the actors were played by men and they were laughing at women. I do think, yikes, on rereading as like a grown adult, like just Lysistrata, you have suffered for 20 years in an endless war that you don't believe in. You've gained control of the entirety of Athens' like treasury. And you just say, "Stop it, boys." And you give it back. Like you don't keep it.
Yeah, of course they did, because once they got what they wanted, they didn't need to have to work for a living. They didn't say, okay, now we have to be in charge and deal with all the labor that involves being in charge. How is that not feminist? How is that not female supremacy?
Any of the power is wild. It's wild to me. It's just like the lesson was like the ladies just need to talk some sense into daddy and then daddy will take care of it and he'll stop the war.
No, no, no. It's Mama is just has to talk sense into her little boy who she's in charge of, and then he'll behave. That's what this is.
I don't like that, but I did really like this book, and I will link it below if you want to read it. But also, please enjoy.
That's why you notice here that Collier, she has nothing good to say about anything. Nothing can be positively feminist because it either is not giving women what they want, or it does give women what they want and exposes women in a very unflattering light. So there's never going to be a positive talked about this, right? Let's get into Medea.
Medea. So this whole conversation inside Aristophanes' plays about Euripides being a known huge misogynist was very interesting to me because I, a kid who read a lot of like classics, loved Euripides because he wrote one of my favorite female characters, of course, Medea. She
So a man wrote a female character that you really loved. Okay, it's nice to see you give credit. So men obviously can write good female characters, right?
She's not a hero, but she is awesome, and it's so rare to see like a strong female character in
That is such a cringe term, right?
in Greek and Roman literature that's not a god, and I love Medea. So
Well, okay, again, here's a fantastic female character, Arachne, who is not a god, who defeated the gods. How come you don't talk about her? How come she isn't well known in feminist, you know, in the feminist mindset or worldview or whatever you want to call it, right?
so I also reread Medea, and I still loved it. Medea was originally part of a trilogy, and it was performed all together, but we only have the one. We only have Medea. It was performed in 431 BC, so before Aristophanes and before the Peloponnesian War.
Right.
And apparently this play didn't do as well with the audience. Like
Oh,
these plays were always given in like contests to select the best drama or whatever. And Euripides didn't do very well, and they think it might be because he took some liberties with the myth of Medea. So Medea is not a historical character, she's a mythical character,
right.
and they think he might have changed the ending in a way that made the audience mad. But I'm just going to talk about the text of the play,
Okay,
not
let's
like
hear
the
this.
other versions of the myth. But first, of course, I have to fill you in on the background of Medea, just in case you're not familiar. I don't know, did you have friends when you were 12 years old or something? You weren't reading the Argonautica? So Medea
Please knock it off with the geek pity party. Okay? You're a pretty young woman. You have the world by the balls. You had friends.
is a princess, but she's also related to the gods. She's the granddaughter of Helios, the sun god, the god representing the sun, and she's the daughter of the king of Colchis. Medea first shows up in the mid
Wow. Wow, she's a very ordinary girl. She has divine lineage, and she's the daughter of the highest ranking man that's in the land. Okay.
myth of Jason. You know Jason and the Argonauts.
Yeah.
It's most famously in the Argonautica, and just the most quick recap of all time. Jason was going to be the king of something, but he didn't. Somebody took over. And so in order to become the king, he has to go get the golden fleece. And to do that, he gets the Argo, and he gets a bunch of heroes including Heracles sometimes. The myths differ, to like go around and do island adventures. You know those things in Greek mythology that famously take like 20 years, and like you meet witches and stuff. Medea is a witch. One thing that happens to Jason that's important is he helps Hera, who is disguised as an old sad woman, across some river. So now Hera really likes Jason, and he's always got like good luck because of that. And they land on Colchis.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like this happens a lot. Like a lot of these male Greek heroes have the backing of one of the gods. There's also often a female goddess, right? That's that says something, doesn't it? Right. Arachne, she said, "No, I don't owe the god anything. I did this all on my own."
Where the golden fleece is, and Hera is like, hey, there's no way Jason's not gonna die. We need to convince Medea to help him. So she has Hera, the god, has Eros shoot Medea with an arrow and make her immediately fall in love with Jason. So Medea, even though she feels quite guilty, betrays her family and helps Jason out.
Wow, that's quite a heroine. So basically, a famous bad boy shows up and she betrays her blood. That's not very flattering to women, right? But it is flattering to them because it's actually truthful. Women would love to do this shit.
And while they're escaping, Medea kills her own brother to distract her father so Jason and the Argonauts and now also Medea can leave. Medea and Jason get married. It's a love story. Medea is banned from her home country now, obviously because she killed her brother and everything. So they take the golden fleece and they go back. Ioclus, is that where Jason is from? King Peleus is like, I see that you've brought the golden fleece, but like also no. I'm gonna be the king, you're not gonna be the king. And so Medea, in anger, tricks King Peleus's daughters into killing him. And obviously that doesn't make Jason the
So she's vying for power, right? Okay.
king because they just murdered the king, so they have to escape. So they escape to Corinth. And they're not royal, but they're just like happy. It's a love story. They have some children together and they live there. Fun. So
Yeah, yeah. I don't believe that part. That shows you it was written by a man. She wouldn't be happy with that.
this is Medea at the start of the play by Euripides. She's kind of an immigrant. She no longer has a homeland. She's made a lot of enemies, but she has dedicated herself to Jason and their family. In the play by Euripides, they have two sons. And she has kind of given up everything, including her homeland, to be
Well, she hasn't given it up. She's betrayed them. Right. To be with a famous bad boy.
with this man and have these children. And of course, the play opens with Jason having left Medea to marry Glauce, the daughter of King Creon. That's
Okay, so he's going for power too, right? He doesn't want to be a peasant. That makes sense.
that's how the play opens. And this is of course bad because Jason, in the eyes of the gods, including Hera and like the law of the land, is married to Medea. And you can't just
The gods, but the gods are the one who hit Medea with an arrow. Eros hit her with an arrow, made her fall in love. So they were screwing her over to start with.
marry someone else. Medea is famously a witch and a murderer. So King Creon, worried about his daughter who's going to marry Jason, is like, Medea, you have to get out of here. And Medea convinces King Creon, like, I totally will. I'll totally go, but you have to give me one day to like sort out everything. And Medea uses this one day to plot the murder of Glauce, King Creon, and also her children that she has with Jason.
Yeah, her children. It's funny. This is the one thing, like you can understand her plotting to kill the others, but was her children get to do anything? This happens in real life too, by the way, Collier. Uh, Women brag themselves up as being nurturers and loving children more than anything, but they're the first ones to murder the children just to snub the man, showing that there was no love for the children in the first place. This happens in real life all the time.
So she does this in order to destroy Jason. She tricks Jason into thinking she's like totally cool with this. She sends her children to
Why doesn't she just run off with her children if she loves them and hurt them that way? Because Collier, there's no child support. There's no child support racket. That's why.
this wedding, while their father does a bigamy with this tainted dress and tiara. Glauce is like 20 years old to Jason's 50, and she just likes the pretty things and puts them on, and she just lights on fire her father.
Yeah, that explains too, right? Why guys like younger women, because they're easy to impress.
Father grabs her and lights on fire. The children have already been taken back to Medea's house. She murders them, and then Jason shows up, and he's like, "Oh man!" She flies away at the end in Helios's chariot, like the thing that pulls the sun. And there's dragons, and she has the bodies of her two children, and she's like, "See ya!" And she buries her sons in the land of Hera. So yeah, like I'm not even joking. Euripides, as like me reading as an adult woman, felt very feminist to me. The discussion they were having felt very modern.
Yeah.
Like during the play, we hear from Jason who's like, listen, Medea, I'm doing this for you. I am going to marry
Is it modern or is just that women and men haven't changed since the Stone Age?
a princess and I'm going to move away and I'm going to be rich and wealthy and I'm going to be the king and I'm going to have children with the princess and your sons will have royal stepbrothers. That's going to be good for them. I'm doing this for you, actually. And the way Euripides writes Medea responding this just feels
Well, actually, it's true. That is how it should be looked at in those days. He wants a better life for her, right? And guess what? Being a hero doesn't mean anything once you become just a working stiff. There's no status. Women go for status, Collier. So she might have gone with this bad boy because he was the heroic bad boy. But once he became a working husband, all that would have drained away, and she would have left him anyway.
very modern. Of course, let me read to you from this translation, which is oh, Penguin Classics, translated with an introduction by Philip Villicott. I liked this one. I don't know if there's like a better one. Okay, this is Medea talking about her plight. Still more, a foreign woman coming among new laws, new customs, needs the skill of magic to find out what her home could not teach her, how
I'm going to get skip beyond because then she talks about misandry, right? Now you guys have the context. You'll see what she's saying.
oops, a misandry. So here's the thing, I was convinced by Rachel Cusk's Medea. I felt for her. Why is Jason allowed to leave? Why does he get to make the decision to blow up everyone's life without consequence? But no matter what happens in the play, no matter what happens, I personally, in my feelings about the characters, blame Medea for the sad end to the children. Even when in this
Yeah, exactly. You picked up on that. The children were not people to Medea. They were objects that she owned. And that attitude we see in real life women.
play, in this play by Rachel Cusk, the only thing Medea does is exactly what Jason has done every other time. She says, well, I'm not going to do this, so good luck with the children, and she just leaves. I still blame her for their sad end, and that I have committed a misinjury. I have lower expectations for men when it comes to fatherhood than women when it comes to motherhood.
No, 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 no. That's a bold-faced lie you just told. You do not. You were a feminist. You expect men to burden the the world on their shoulders while you live under the sky.
Like, yeah, it's not fair that men are allowed to abandon their children, but Medea
Now you're lying outright. Men are not allowed to abandon their children. What do you think child support is? The child support is where the woman enslaves a man via her children. Women can put, in real life, right now, can put their children up for adoption if they don't want to bother with them. So women are free to abandon their children, not men. Men are forced to pay child support. So, Collier, you have told a bold-faced lie.
how could you do that? You're a mother. Like, I literally, that is my first thought. Rachel Cusk really
My first thought is, of course she did that. She's a mother.
helped me unpack this by making me think about it. While we're talking about the classics, I'm going to have to talk about another classic, How to Train Your Dragon 2, which came out in 2014. Spoilers for How to Train Your Dragon 1 and 2, I guess. I have to tell you about the plot. So, in the first one, Hiccup is like a small little Viking boy, and he has his father's the chief, and he's like a big guy. And like they have this kind of awkward relationship because Hiccup's mom is dead, right? And his father's like overprotective, but also pushing him to be like a big manly man. And Hiccup's mom was murdered by dragons. His dad saw this, or saw the remnants.
So this is a very pro-male movie then, because the father's protective of his son, but he still realizes that he has to deal with the outside world eventually. Right. It's sad that fathers have to man up their boys, but a lot of them see what they're up against. Right.
Love it. And so, like, as a community, they're really good at killing dragons, and Hiccup is going to go be a dragon killer, but then instead he befriends a dragon. And, he realizes that dragons are friends, and he convinces his community and his father and him repair the relationship, and they all ride dragons at the end. Solid movie. Great movie. How to Train Your Dragon 1. How to Train.
Yeah, yeah. It's very pro male, and you'll notice that these sequels end up destroying that. They become anti-male.
Your Dragon 2. 5 years in the future. Hiccup's like a big man and he's training to be the chief even though he feels nervous. And his dad's like, I love you, son. We're buddies. We'll get through this. And there's a war. And so they need more dragons and they stumble upon this dragon's nest. And Hiccup, oh my God, it's his mom. He's so happy. His mom didn't die. She was just protecting dragons. And then his father shows up and like he's not even mad. They just get back together and they're like, oh my God, this is so great. We're all so happy. We're a family again. And then Hiccup's dad dies. They win the war, but it's like okay that his dad died because he has his mom. So like everything is fine. This movie made me so angry. I hate Hiccup's mom. They just forgive her. And then
This is a true feminist movie, Collier. This is a true feminist movie. Because this woman, her family is just there to serve her. And she abandons it. It's actually women in real life that abandon it. You got angry, but I bet there was very few other people who got angry over this. Because women are fine with women abandoning their family. They want that kind of power. They have that kind of power. Right?
they just kill his dad and it's fine. Like just imagine you grew up with a father who was like emotionally traumatized because he saw your mother murdered by a pony. And you only have your dad, but also it's not like your real dad because he is so traumatized. He is so overprotective and weird that like you never get to know your real father because you have this very strained relationship. And somehow you beat the odds. You grow up to be a normal kid. You repair this relationship with your father who's no longer a broken man. And despite your terrible childhood, you've moved on and you've made the best of it and your life is fine. And then you find out, no, your mother didn't die in a pony attack. She staged it. She's actually been alive this whole time, just like living with ponies. Like that.
It's very dehumanizing to her family. She cut and run. And people were fine as far as I remember from the movie. I've never heard any complaints till now by you.
A terrible childhood. She traumatized your father. She ruined your childhood. She abandoned you, for ponies. And you just forgive her. Like, it's fine. That's this movie. They immediately forgive her. It is crazy. She was alive the whole time.
Well, it's right there in reality. There was a woman who murdered in real life, murdered her husband, and her sons supported her. So this is just human nature being played out.
Just use your words, Valka. What is this? And it's the same thing as in Medea, Because of the patriarchy, I am much.
So you're going to blame women's bad behavior on a fictional idea where men are in charge. Yeah, you are a typical feminist, all right. Patriarchy doesn't exist, never did.
Much more accepting of men abandoning their children than I am of women.
No. No one is accepting of men abandoning their children. Men don't get to abandon their children.
Abandoning their children in media. Like, I am way more mad at Hiccup's mom than I am at, like, Aladdin's dad, And I think that that's shameful. I should not do that. That's bad. And I think this dissonance is, you know, why we need feminism. This is the patriarchy.
So we need a hate movement to support your lies. Right.
We should be equally upset at any parent who fails to care for the child they created, no matter what gender the parent is.
That's true. However, obviously people don't mind when women abandon their children. That's why it's legal again in my country for women to put their kids up for adoption. Right?
When you talk about feminism, there's always like some guy that's like, feminism, huh? Equal rights for equal lefts. I can hit you then. If you're equal to me, I can just hit you. And and that's like a huge red flag. That guy just wants to beat women. Stay away.
He wants to beat women who lay their hands on them. Uh, are not people allowed to use force to defend themselves against force? Yeah. Okay. So you're telling another lie. You're telling a lie about this man.
Away from that guy. But also, it's a crazy thing to say because no,
What does this say about your personal character, Collier?
you can't just hit me. You can't just hit anyone. You can't just hit other men because you're
Yes, you can hit people who hit first. That's the point. That's what the point he was making.
both men. We are adults. We use our words. No, you can't hit anyone. In the Medea
Yeah, so you're basically against equality then. But of course, you're a feminist, so you are against equality.
version of this, Medea abandons her children because she's like, well, Jason was going to abandon his children. And that's not the correct response. I mean, obviously, it's not fair that men get to do this. The
No,
response
no, we don't get to do this again. Men are forced to pay child support while women are allowed to put their kids up for adoption. We are not the ones who abandon.
is not, women should also get to do this. The response is, men should not abandon their children.
Okay, you disgust me now. Anyway, we'll end it here. It's been a long trip, and I just want to end off saying, guys, think about what women really like. Do they like Arachne? No, they haven't even heard of that story. They prefer the rape fantasy of Medusa. So this is a mirror to your nature as a female human being. Come to terms, Collier.